Good evening and welcome to this Friday evening talk from Leicester and Harrow Brahmakumaris. This evening is a wonderful topic, spirituality and the art of managing time. These days we always struggle saying that I don't have time. But how is it connected? How spirituality is very much connected to the present time, and how this can allow us to manage our time better. So, not going any longer on this topic, but Sister Cherry will be with us, who's going to share the insights about spirituality and the art of managing time. Just to give you a brief introduction, Sister Cherry is with Brahmakumaris for over 40 years and been worked as an occupational therapist in NHS, and also coordinated activities in Coventry and currently at Leeds. So I welcome Sister Cherry to come and share the insights of this evening topic. Welcome to Sister Cherry.
Thank you, Harika. Can you hear me?
Yes, that's clear, Sister Cherry.
Great, lovely. Thank you for that lovely intro and the little insight into the topic. So yes, I'm here to talk to you about spirituality and the art of managing time. It strikes me, just thinking about the topic now, that it's about two completely different aspects of life. One is the world of being dealing with deadlines, etc., and managing day-to-day stuff. And the other is stepping into the timeless world of the soul. And to me, both of these things matter a lot. To be able to be in these two worlds, that to me is kind of the art of living. So just briefly a bit more about my journey these past 40 years. Soon after I joined the Brahmakumaris and began my meditation journey, as well as finding myself connected with a very large organization. Brahmakumaris now bigger than it was in the 80s when I joined, but nevertheless a very large global community. I soon after that joined another community. I trained and then worked for the National Health Service, and even just the hospital I was in the Midlands, it was 4,000 staff. It was a very large hospital. So you can imagine the importance of managing time. If you're working with a big community in a hospital, you've got to meet deadlines, etc. So the whole world of doing things on time, getting reports done on time, etc. That was there for me for a long period of time. But also, the Brahmakumaris is a spiritual organization. It's also an administrative group. We organize many things like this little talk. We're kind of known for always doing something new. And that means showing up on time. And it's really of service, isn't it, to be well organized. And so I've been in these two worlds of turning up to meetings and Zoom talks on time, getting my act together, and practicing and diving into the world of meditation and spirituality, in which we aspire to leave all that behind and just be the being, feel the timelessness of our original experience beyond this world, etc. And so this topic brings my two worlds together, and I hope as Harika was touching on just now, I hope you see through this little talk and presentation the very strong connection between these two, and indeed how appropriate spirituality is in enabling us to manage our time well. So you can tell me what you think afterwards, and I know there's some time allotted for questions as well, but see what you make of this marrying of the two topics. The message behind the message I want to convey is that we can use time management tools and we can be very efficient. I remember people I worked with, especially managers above me, that they were amazing in how much they could get done, better than me. Really, they had some dedication and life skills that I couldn't quite match up to all the time, although I tried. But what was missing for a lot of my colleagues, and what I was developing and learning, as well as my hospital skills, if you like, my therapeutic skills, was the art of kind of managing myself and caring for myself in the midst of all that. And I have found and continue to find tools like meditation invaluable in enabling me to pause, to think clearly, etc. And I feel that's the ingredient that, if that's missing from time management techniques, then it's not the full picture. We tend to get depleted. And so that's the message. And I'm going to put it across using a little series of PowerPoint slides to kind of illustrate the points I'd like to share. So if you just bear with me, I'm going to screen share and talk you through a few slides now. So I hope you can see this title slide, Spirituality and the Art of Managing Time. Sure, somebody will tell me if it's not showing up. There's the message in short. A good time manager is a clear thinker. I think that people who have no interest in spirituality would buy into that. You need that, don't you? You need to make decisions in the moment. You need to know what to leave and what to do. You need clear thinking. So even that in itself, I know that spirituality brings clarity, but that statement in itself says something. Again, Harika was saying this, one of the main reasons that we all are forced to manage our time is it seems like often there's not enough time. I don't think I'm alone. I think that people listening to this would have similar experience. It's often the case that time runs out for me, that I would have done that in more detail, but the time ran out, or something else comes up and I have to kind of move on, let go. Yeah? So it's life now. Fast living means there's often not enough time. Right? So we have to manage the time we have, right? And this is something that I'm going to develop a kind of an argument about and put across. Clear thinking happens when I see the bigger picture. So when I'm making decisions about what needs doing in a situation, I kind of need to take in everything, especially if I'm, say, for instance, leading a meeting or leading a project, I need the bigger view of it. I need to know things whereby I can see where we're heading, etc. But my point today in this talk is that bigger picture actually includes the need to care for my soul or myself. And that's the bit that that's the addition that I feel this talk is putting across. Spirituality and the art of managing time. So the bigger picture, we'll look at that. But back to time management itself, let's look a bit further at why this matters. And I've got two types of people for us to think about. What do you notice about a person who's a good time manager that you would say, oh, they obviously organize their time well? So here are three examples, but I'd like you to think as well about someone who you consider a good manager of their own time, and think about what makes you say that about them. So these are my three thoughts initially. They tend to turn up for meetings, for appointments, etc. on time. They've organized themselves for that. They've paced themselves. They've thought ahead. They tend not to forget little things because, again, they've given themselves time to see what they need to prepare. If you're going out of the house, don't forget your keys. Being mindful of, you have to give yourself space and time to think about these things. And when you meet them, they tend to be fully present with you. They're not kind of thinking, yeah, I like to talk to you, but there's something on my mind that I haven't quite finished, right? So the good time manager. And I'd like you to just think for yourself now of a person that comes to mind who you would put in that category. A friend, a relative, a colleague, a manager. And think about I'll let you think, find the person in your mind. So I've thought of somebody for me, and what do I know about that person? Is it their calmness? Again, is it their ability to be very present? So that person is somebody probably that you quite like to be around, right? They are to be trusted, if you like. And they'll tend to do what they say they'll do. That's another one, isn't it? So these are the things we notice about people who manage their time well. Shows how important it is. Now let's look at the other side. What do we notice about people who don't manage their time well? You probably know one of them as well. You may be one of them as well. And we all are sometimes, right? They're often late. Oh, I'm so sorry, the phone rang, and etc. They make mistakes because they're not that present all the time. And they're often preoccupied. Now, we all do all those things and more, but we don't act like that all the time, because we know that we have to organize ourselves. And the more we manage our time, the less that happens. So again, to kind of ground this in our real experience, let's think of someone who is a little bit like that, a little bit disorganized. They might be lovely and a nice person to be with, but yeah, a bit disorganized. Let somebody come to your mind, and I have one, and I'm not going to name them. They're lovely, but pretty disorganized. What do you think? What do you notice further about them? So let that person be on the screen of your mind for a moment. They can be a bit annoying. Yeah, they tend to not be there when they say, and they tend to not deliver on things they say they're going to do, right? So we've all got our strengths and weaknesses, and this isn't about judging people, but it's interesting for me to share this because this is about the importance of being a good time manager. It means that I'll be of more service to people. And I had to learn that in the health service. I had to learn to, if I was going to be of service to patients and my teammates, the multidisciplinary team, I absolutely had to get my act together. It was essential. Otherwise, I might be very clever in my job, but I'm part of a team. So I hope that was an interesting exercise in helping us kind of see the importance of this topic, really. A little more. Just the fact that we expect others, we do expect others to manage their time well so that they can be ready to meet our needs. And you just have to think of these kind of examples, and there are many, in which we have expectations. You go to the bank, you expect that bank clerk to be not looking at their phone, not talking to their colleague. So they've dedicated time to you. And if you've got an appointment, you expect it to be, on time. The doctor's receptionist, if you have to ring the doctor or visit, again, especially the receptionist role, and I've done a little of this, a receptionist is meant to be fully engaged with the customer or the patient or the client. And if you've ever experienced being, the customer, etc., or the patient, and that receptionist has divided attention, how does it make you feel? They're not attending to me, they're not really listening. It's quite disconcerting. And so they might well, from their side of it, have so much on their plate that they're trying to multitask. No, when there's a person there, they have to be present. We expect it. And the GP themselves, the same thing. We just expect people, when we're with them, when we're talking to them, to put everything else aside. And we know for ourselves, when we have to put everything else aside for somebody, when that person's gone, we have to pick up those things again. So we're constantly managing our needs and their needs, right? Which is to do with managing our time and energy. I think in a way, the point behind all this is that we are social animals, we're team players, and we want to be that. We want to be part of the world around us. And so we have to manage how we do that. I was looking into the models of managing time. If you Google time management, there are absolutely thousands of entries for that. And there are many books on it and many interesting models. And I came across one that I'd heard about before, which really speaks to what I want to talk about in terms of spirituality. So I'm going to just describe to you an interesting model for time management. You may have heard this before. I have. It's really useful. So it goes like this, and I'll explain how this works. It's kind of called the jar of rocks. And first, you've got this jar, and the jar represents how much time you have in a day. So a big glass jar. And the story that I read is that a professor wanted to make the point about the importance of time management to his students, his or her students. I don't know if they were male or female. And so they brought this glass jar out, and what they did was filled it with rocks, big pieces of stone, till it was full. And they said to the class, "Is this jar full?" And the class said, "Yes, yes, sir," or whatever. "Yes, professor, the jar's full." And then he got some little pebbles and he poured them in, and they filled the spaces. And again, he asked, "Is the jar full?" And again, they said, "Oh, yes, it's full now," because the little pebbles had found their way through the gaps and filled up the jar. And then he brought sand, poured that in, and it also filled all the tiny gaps. And this time, really, the jar was, it seemed to be packed full. There were no spaces. And he again asked, "Is the jar full now?" And the students said yes. And I guess they were a little bit curious. What was this about? What he went on to say next was that when you are managing your day, if you fill your day with lots of little things, whatever comes up, you may well fill it with the sand. You won't have room for the pebbles or the rocks. And what these things represent are, the rocks are your main priorities that you need to think about first and foremost. If they don't happen, you look back at the end of the day and think, "Should have written that report. I should have done that," and I got caught up in other things. And then the next level of priority would be the small pebbles and then the sand. But the point of that model is that we need to look at our priorities when we manage our time. So we've got a lot. If I write a to-do list, it's like, I could do with 3 days to do this day's to-do list. And I prioritize. So yeah, must do that. And that could wait. So we pick out the key things and at least they get done. And that's the way to look, so that you can look back on your day and say, yeah, couldn't do it all, but at least that letter got sent, at least that email got sent, at least I prepared for that session and I did my best. So that's the jar of rocks model. And what it leads to is the question about priorities, really. So really, what are my priorities? Here's a kind of everyday list. I might think, I must sort out finances. There's work to do in my house. There's people I want to meet. I've got some shopping to do. So we're all juggling many things. But my point is, don't forget to look after your soul. Don't forget to make time for yourself, for being in the moment. And that's where spirituality is. That's the whole point of having a spiritual approach, is I take care of myself on the inside. So what is spirituality? It's one of those words that's not so easy to define, but having studied the spirituality that the Brahma Kumaris practice and teach, I've brought it down to these are three of the key principles that I think the Brahmakumaris hold dear, and many groups that practice spirituality would talk about these, I think. Spirituality is making time to meet myself through reflection and meditation. I really saw that missing in the hospital. I often saw people rush from one thing to the other all day long. I often saw people eat their dinner at their desk. I often saw people overwork and get unwell. And they kind of didn't have the training that I'm blessed with having had of making time for my meditation, little moments in the day. And they didn't know the art so much of checking in with themselves on the inside, looking after their soul. So that's a key principle. It's also about spending time thinking about values and what matters to me, living a life based on values, reflecting on what honesty is and what respect is. So time out thinking about those tends to inform how I am in the world. And thirdly, a key ingredient that is growing for me over the years, having a sacred mindset as opposed to a secular mindset. So a mindset that puts my relationship with the divine, with that which is sacred, with God in my life, and where I get purpose and meaning from that relationship. So I'm not just driven by the to-do list and by acquiring things, or just looking at the worldly world, but I'm interested in the mysteries and in the secrets of the soul, the connection with the divine. That ingredient means that spirituality brings a whole other aspect to my life, another dimension that perhaps would be missing otherwise. So, spirituality and time management, let's bring the two together. Why spirituality matters. So I can make lists and I can make good decisions and I can get a lot done, and we aspire to that. But if I don't include this spiritual dimension in my life, then what's going to happen? Eventually, I'm going to get depleted. I'm not recharging my battery. I'm going and going, I lose balance. And it often happens that if there isn't a spiritual side to my life, that my relationships suffer. So, a good team leader really cares about and nurtures the relationships with the people in their team. And if they themselves, as a leader, are grounded in a spiritual practice, they'll have the capacity to listen carefully. They'll have the ability to see other people's point of view, and they won't turn into the type of, I've had some managers in my time who were, dedicated to their work, but really not nice to work with, because they were kind of blinkered by the pressure of work, and they couldn't really be there in a compassionate way for their team. So difficult to be around people like that. They're very conscientious, but you kind of can't really build relationship with them. Yeah? And it's a theme for me generally that we are beings of relationship, and it matters how we interact with each other. Yeah. I recall my favorite manager, who was also very hardworking, very dedicated. And she had the ability to take off her hat as a manager and connect with you. And so that manager kind of was able to do the two things, be the strong leader, and she was also able to be a really good listener, compassionate person. So I know which type of person I like to be with, and I know which type of person I like to be. And this is why, for me, as I manage my time, my spiritual practice really does matter to me. So it's just, it ends up with this kind of summary for these slides, kind of putting it all together in a sentence. A good time manager is a clear thinker who pays attention to caring for their spiritual well-being. So as I've put these slides together this week and put this talk together, it's really reinforced for me the importance of my spiritual practice. And I hope that it's put across the message to you that the two worlds can be brought together, and the world of spirituality can inform the world of our busy lives and enhance it. So I'll just stop that screen share. Yeah, so I rest my case, but with the time available now, just want to talk a little further about spirituality as I understand it. And in particular, one of the points that was on that slide about what is spirituality, reflection, time for reflection and meditation. One thing that we've been trained to do in the Brahma Kumaris is to have little moments. One of the terms for these little moments is traffic control, controlling the traffic of the mind. And I've found it a lovely skill to develop. Yes, long meditations are really helpful, and I believe in that. I do give time to 45 minutes, half an hour, sometimes an hour of meditation at a time. That has its own beauty. But short meditations of 3 or 5 minutes scattered throughout the day have a very important part to play in bringing spirituality into my day and in actually informing the way I handle situations. So if you can imagine, you're about to start the task of cleaning your house, or whatever is the task of engaging with people in a meeting. If it starts with a short meditation where I still my mind and I awaken my sense of myself from the inside, I recharge my battery and just really become very, very present, how much that is going to enhance what happens next. And then think about the end of the task or the meeting, and various things came up. Some things worked, some things didn't. Extra things came along you weren't expecting. And so you've now got a bigger to-do list. Anything can happen, can't it? And now it's time to move on to something else. So again, imagine just 2-3 minutes, again, of quiet reflection, of meditation, of letting go of what just happened, putting a full stop to that and going back to the stillness of your being. it enables you then to move on to the next thing and not carry it with you. So I know that a good a meditator who gets this right could be in a very a meeting where they're very engaged, a lot is discussed and decided, and maybe some heated exchanges, and then that meeting finishes and they go out of the room and meet another person. It's as if the meeting didn't happen. They're present for that person. So it's a beautiful practice to develop, and it really is a tool that I find very valuable in my day-to-day life. So I'll just, to finish off my talk, just talk a little about what is that journey, and how can that journey be made very quickly into stillness? How do we let go of the busyness and the involvement of our minds in something or in some people? How do we just drop the subject and become still? There's a very beautiful key principle in the meditation, which is Raja Yoga meditation that we practice, which is to do with my outer world and my inner world. And if I get this, if the penny drops about this principle, then this art of letting go and moving on becomes practical. It becomes a reality for me, and I manage my mind well. So that principle is that there's two aspects to every human being. And everybody would probably buy into this, that there is what you can see, and then there's the inner world of our thoughts and feelings. So there is the body that others see. And because of this body, then there's the role I play. So I might be a colleague, I might be a therapist, I might be a teacher, I might be a friend, I might be a sister. I have many roles, actually. And those roles are important to me, and they also engage me and fill my mind. I have to think about how to fulfill those roles. I'm stimulated to think and make decisions, engage with people. So that's the person that others see, and that's my way of relating to the world around me, to the family of humanity that I belong to. But there's another me, and that me is the me that's always been there. I wasn't always a meditation teacher, and I wasn't always an occupational therapist. In fact, I'm not one now, but I was for a long time. I won't always be a meditation teacher. You know, at some point, may I live a long life, I'll be too old to teach, and maybe I won't. But our roles are not the permanent self. When I was 6, 7, or 8 years old, I wasn't these, grown-up roles at all, but I was still me. And so there's two aspects to the human being, the body and the soul. And the key principle that is actually a challenging principle, but also a revolution in our thinking when we get it, the challenging idea, not that I have a soul somewhere inside, I have my, my aspirations, my dreams, not that I have that. No, I am that. First and foremost, I am consciousness. And that consciousness manifests into a body through which I play my role. But when I ask the question, who am I? And I answer it with, I'm the being of consciousness, first and foremost. I'm the soul. And that soul is essentially a peaceful and powerful, loving, compassionate being, as we all are under the skin. When I really learn the art of defining myself as that primarily, and also I have roles to play. Also, I engage with the world. So I'm first and foremost a being of consciousness, a point of pure divine energy that inhabits this body. Then that's the first step towards the sacred mindset that I was mentioning earlier. And it's also the key to the art of meditation. So going back to the scenario of being in a meeting and the meeting finishes and I just want to return to my peace, I can say to myself with this understanding, I was there interacting with people, perhaps I was taking the minutes, so I had that role, but I'm part of that team in that meeting. But that doesn't define me. I go back to my sense of self as the soul. I am first and foremost the spiritual being inside. Spirituality is what defines me. And my nature is peace. And I let go. I let go. So the things of the meeting, they have their relevance, but they take backstage. And what comes to the foreground for me is my presence as a soul. And I kind of make my light shine again. I connect with the stillness of my being. So it starts to become easy to be present and to put down the expansion of things. And imagine doing that. So you close everything down for a moment or two. Imagine being able to sustain that for a couple of minutes, just to be in the moment. All the chat is gone from my mind. Then I walk out of the meeting, meet somebody who wants to ask me something. Yes, can I help you? So I'm present. And so really, there's a lot to be said for this regular practice of bringing, the term is soul consciousness, bringing soul consciousness into my day regularly to help me manage the day and be present for people, whoever's in front of me. So I put my case across and I hope it was helpful. I'm going to close now and just finish off again with what I think was the message of the talk before I hand over to Harika to field any questions if there are any. So spirituality and the art of managing my time, these two things really do go together. To develop the spiritual side of my life, to find time to look after my soul, my beingness. That is definitely going to help me to manage my time well in such a way that I don't just get a lot done, but I can sustain myself. I can look after myself on the inside, and I can keep building good relationships with people. So thank you for listening, and I'll hand you over back to Harika now. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Cherry. It is very beautiful what you shared about keeping the mind sacred, and also how spirituality will help us to manage our time well. There's a couple of questions that came to me. Is like, how do you maintain a sacred mindset? We are living in a world where when you step out of your door, there are lots of things that you see, there are lots of things that you hear, the news, or there's a lot happening around, whether in terms of the family or the world or the external challenges that we have. So looking at everything, how do you think we can manage to have a sacred mindset?
Good, nice question. It's very true, Harika. There is plenty going on, isn't there?
Yeah.
Plenty to take us away from our poise and stillness and our sacredness. Yeah. You know, the way we take in the world isn't just based on what we see and what we experience, but it's on how we interpret it. It's the eyes that we see with. We're beings that make meaning of everything. You know, we're constantly saying, oh, this happened, this must have happened because. So something goes, say, wrong, somebody drops something. If I maintain the right mindset, I won't go into blame. I'll just say what needs to happen. And so it starts with how I'm seeing myself. And if I'm feeling a little bit depleted and in need of other people's cooperation, approval, etc., the neediness will lead me to make meaning of things, or they did that because they weren't careful or something. But if I am full and strong, I'm looking after myself well, I'll make sense of it in a different way. I'll have a more generous heart. And when it comes to global news or hearing about the situations that people have that are situations of sorrow, again, if I just see it on face value, I can get caught up and lose my spirituality. Oh dear, what's happening? You know, and this shouldn't be happening. That kind of inner language is saying something about my lack of feeling my place in the world clearly. And so
what is, sorry to interrupt in that moment. So what is that you would be doing when you see something like that? Because this is something really important for everyone and practical way of doing in their life. Life.
Mm-hmm.
So how can you just share from your own experience, like what kind of a perception or what kind of a way that I should be able to see things in a different way?
Yeah. Let me see myself as a one who's contributing something. Before I trained in my profession, I remember walking around an old people's home, and it was a sad place to see. People were looking like quite, their life didn't seem very meaningful, and I was quite affected by that. After I'd done training as an occupational therapist, I started to think in a similar visit to a place like that, I started to think, oh yeah, so what you can do is you can help these people this way and this way. And I remember the contrast. So if I trust that I can contribute even by my presence, let me consider that if I keep my heart and mind strong, I bring an atmosphere of peace to a situation. So that completely changes how I respond to it. Let me see myself as supporting every situation I see, whether it's with my mind, with my kind words, but there's always something I can do to kind of be the angel in that situation. And I need to trust that.
That's really nice. That I like the idea of that you say, trusting that I can contribute, even just being present. That's very powerful, actually. And I think if I am stable in that moment, that's when I'm actually able to contribute. Otherwise, if I am shaking or if I am disturbed inside and thinking that I'm still contributing, but probably I'm contributing in a negative way.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's very useful.
Okay.
I'm sure if anyone has questions, they'll put me on the chat. And another question that came up is, like you did mention about not to have a to-do list, not driven by a to-do list, but everywhere we go, we are like anything that you touch, you have lots to do. Okay, whether you're in a family or at home or at work, it's like a lot to do. Even if you sit for hours and hours, 24/7 is not enough with the time that we have today. And see, the time is very fast moving. And now we can also feel that we are not able to do much. Actually, we are not really able to manage to do much. So what do you think will help us? Like sometimes you feel that I haven't done anything today, or maybe I might have done something, but really haven't got into that priority. Like the example that you shared is like the professor using the jar and sharing the little things that we do, and we feel that the time is finished. So how do we still have a to-do list or not at all? For some, that is the priority. It's like if you have the to-do list, you get a lot of things done in that day. If you don't have that list, you're like lost. And you end up doing the little things, but you miss the priority things.
Right. Yeah.
Can you share a bit more on that aspect?
Yes. So whether to have a to-do list or not is kind of a question, right? Should we throw it out because we never finish it anyway? I'll just share what I do with you then, Harika. I have a certain relationship with my to-do list. And people who know me know that I go and have a meeting with myself every day if I can. And I do, if possible, sit for half an hour, and I just let the to-do list get written down, and I look at it, and then I look at the time available, and see what I can fit in. And I know that every day things fall off my to-do list. So I've learned to not get tense about it, but to do my best. And there needs to be flexibility, because if you try to do too much, somebody asks you something, out of the blue, you'll say, no, I haven't got time. And they really don't like to hear that. So what I mean to say is that part of getting this right is sitting purely with my to-do list. That's important. I call it meeting myself. Only I know, right, what's on my list. And I want to end up with a sense of how my day will go. If I don't do that, it's like I didn't do myself any favors. So I go through kind of the ritual of that. But on the other hand, I did my best and I leave the rest to God. It's like I've got to have that balance of I get my head into things, but then I trust the drama of life is okay as well. And there's a mindset around time which we need to let go of, which is that we're running out of time. If we can let go of that feeling of scarcity about time, magically we kind of have more time. Yeah, so just a little thought.
Thank you very much for that. It's very useful to trust, and I like the way you said meeting myself. Okay, and do the best what you can. That's great. Taking on that note, maybe would you like to do a short meditation?
Sure. Yeah. So as I was saying earlier, short meditations are really very helpful. So if I've only got 5 minutes, what can I do? How can I bring stillness to my mind? So I'm going to use a few terms which are kind of under the heading of descriptions of the soul. So some aspects of consciousness, which I find really helpful. Here are those things, and then I'll do the meditation. The soul is not physical. The soul resides within the body, and the soul is pure consciousness, and its nature is peace and compassion. So this meditation will be around reflecting on those ideas and owning those ideas for myself. So I sit looking ahead at something, and I choose to put aside thoughts of the day, thoughts of what I've just been doing, because I want to reflect on the spiritual side of my life. I think about some aspects of the soul that I understand. The soul is that part of a person that can't be seen, that resides within the physical form, that is consciousness. The soul is that part of the person which can't be seen, which resides within a person, which is pure consciousness. I hold that idea in my mind, the idea of the soul. And now I repeat that idea, but this time making it more to do with myself. I consider myself to be a being that can't be seen by others. I consider myself to be the consciousness that resides inside the body. I consider myself to be a being which is invisible to the eye. The soul is said to reside within the forehead. So I reflect on that positioning of the soul. The soul resides in the forehead of a person, and from its seat inside, it looks out through the windows of the eyes of the body. The soul resides within the forehead of a person, and it looks out from its seat in the forehead through the windows of its eyes out at the world. I hold that idea in my mind. And finally, I repeat that idea with the feeling that it's about me, that I am that. So I'm awakening that sense of myself as being the being inside. I'm that being that sits in the center of the forehead of this body. I am pure consciousness residing in the forehead. I'm the soul. I sit inside and I look out through the windows of my eyes. I look out at the world. I'm on the inside. And my nature is peace. My nature is compassion. And I've found again the spiritual dimension of my life. I've engaged again with that vibration of my being that reminds me of that which is sacred, that which is divine. And I can build on this and develop my relationship with God, seeing the bigger picture of my life. I am Om, an eternal soul, and Shanti, a still, silent being, a child of God. And as my meditation ends, I feel I've returned to the stillness where I belong. Om Shanti, Om Shanti. Thank you.
Om Shanti. It's very essential and very simple how you manage your time. What I picked up is when you are in that awareness as a spiritual being, it makes everything organized and easy. I like the exercise that you made us do is when you're looking at a person who is managing time very well, what do you see in them? You mentioned some qualities already in the list, but what I find is it's not that they have that ego that I am on time, but that they're very humble and they're more relaxed and cool.
That's right.
And they are very present, actually. They are not forgetting anything. They are doing everything. But I think when you have spirituality in life, you can do more than what you are actually thinking you can do.
Lovely.
Much more is possible because I think you're not engaging your mind in the external things or activity that is not necessary. You know what is right and what is wrong. Your choices of the best is always when you're more going inwards, which is much more clear. Thank you very much, Sister Cherry, for being with us today.
My pleasure.
Very nice after a long time.
With you, yes. Well, I enjoyed it very much, and you've added some lovely points to the discussion. So thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. And I like the meditation, and I like what you said, that meeting time with myself. So maybe we should all have that meeting time with myself. So I know what I need to do, and I know what I can segregate what and what not to do. Right.
Wonderful. Do it.
Well, yeah. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And next week, same time, we'll come back with a new topic, lighten up and let go. So thank you very much. Have a good evening and a wonderful weekend. Om Shanti.